Yes, hello everyone. What is the story? Welcome back to another episode here on Cluiche with me, Séamus, Brady, your host, and for this one, I'm delighted to once again be joined by Aaron Prendergast from Gaelic Games Fan TV. Aaron, in terms of the madness of previewing club championship weekends and trying to stay on top of everything, it's starting to calm down a little bit. We don't have as many games, but we've two absolute crackers to look forward to this weekend. How's the phone with yourself?
Yeah, keeping well, Seamus. Cheers for having me on. Yeah, it's two very interesting games, most definitely. I think this is probably like one of the most exciting games in terms of Glen versus Scotstown in the championship. In the club championship season. You look at, I suppose, the talents that both teams have available. Obviously, Watergraham's Glen of the likes of Conor Glass in there, the likes of Ethan Doherty, Kieran McFell, like just Emma Bradley, who's looks very good this year. And then Scotstown have a whole bulk of Monaghan players. The spine of Monaghan's team runs right through that Scotstown team. So yeah, it's going to be a very, very interesting game. Like Watergraham's Glen bidding for back-to-back Ulster titles. I think it's been a long time since Scotstown have won an Ulster championship. And then obviously down in Munster as well. It was a great wins for both Castlehaven and Dingle the last day. And I suppose it should be two interesting games. And yeah, cheers for having me on.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. It's two really, really even games. I think that's the one thing. I wouldn't be confident going 100% with one or the other. But if you're watching the live stream, don't forget, put your live comments in. If you have any questions for myself or Aaron or any good points to make, we'll read all of them. Even after, if this isn't live anymore, throw them down and we'll get around to responding to them. So we're going to go in the order of the games as they are shown. So both games, thankfully, are live on TG4. Of course, TG4 worth its weight in gold, considering the amount of content that they produce for the GAA. Both games this weekend are on TG4. So the first one is Dingle versus Castlehaven. So obviously, the two of them have not combined against each other that often, but they meet this weekend on the Sunday, Munster Senior Football Championship Final. Dingle versus Castlehaven is being shown live on TG4. It throws in at 2 o'clock. This one, very, very even contest. And I think with both these sides, it's hard to know just exactly how good they are. I know that is something that is difficult to explain exactly why, but neither side has blazed a trail getting to this Munster final. Neither side has took out anyone huge along the way. They've both just gone about the business. Dingle's victory over Clonmel was the impressive one for me. I was definitely sat up and took notice when they won that game. Castlehaven, winning the Cork final was probably their best result so far, getting over the line against Nemo Rangers. And here we are, Munster final. What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting, all right. I suppose Dingle, it wasn't perfect against Clonmel. Like, they were definitely pushed to the pin of their collar the last time out. And, I predicted Clonmel I thought Clonmel would take Dingle going into the game, just following, obviously, Dingle taking a bit of a beating against Mid-Kerry. But, yeah, look, I mean, you have to praise Dingle. I mean, the amount of Gainies they have on the side, they've probably more Gainies in Dingle than they do have Kardashians at this stage. But yeah, obviously Paul Gainey, I think we know what he can do. We know the year he's had. He's had a very solid year for Kerry. I thought he was one of their best players in the final as well. He's really carried that form on for Dingle in the championship. And Dylan Gainey, I think, is, a player I've heard a lot from Kerry fans. Could he maybe start to come into the side? He obviously kicked 5 points the last day versus Clonmel. But Castlehaven are definitely going under the radar ever so slightly. And it's interesting. I know all the focus a lot of the time is on the likes of your Kilmacud Crokes, and obviously Glen have a bit of a story going from what they done last year. Scotstown have a bulk of players, and you're looking in Connacht. Obviously, Bridget's pulled off a big result against Corofin last weekend. So, but Castlehaven are definitely going under the radar ever so slightly. Don't get me wrong, they probably flatter to deceive at some points. They haven't looked perfect. They were quite slow out of blocks against Rathcormac. The game before that, I remember they were a little bit sloppy. They needed extra time to come through it. But they do have good footballers. Michael Hurley's definitely put his hands up maybe to come back into the Cork team. You've obviously got Brian Hurley back in the side as well. He scored a goal and 6 points the last day. So they've got a lot of ways. It's going to be an interesting game, all right. And I think it's going to be the battle of the Hurleys against the battle of the Gainies.
I think that's what it's going to be, to be honest. I think Castlehaven do go under the radar. I do agree with you. Like with the Hurley brothers up front, they have a guaranteed 7 or 8 points a game, I think, with those two. Like they have been doing that for them throughout the championship. At the back as well, I think Castlehaven are super strong. Like you're looking at the likes of Rory Maguire there, who was awesome for Cork this year. You're looking at Mark Collins there at wing back. He can play pretty much anywhere in the team. And they are strong, Castlehaven, and they've got to this point for a reason. Dingle, when the championship started, I was so sure that Dingle were going to win Munster. I was just so sure that they were going to win. I just thought that they were the best club team in Kerry the year previous. I thought they'd been kind of screwed over by the whole mid-Kerry, East Kerry thing. I thought that they were the best side. They should have been out representing Kerry instead of Cairns or Rahleys, but that's how the system works. So that's how the system works. And Cairns went through, even though that they lost 3 times in the Kerry County Championship. But anyway, that's another debate. Dingle, I thought they were the best club team, and they proved themselves to be the best club team in the club championship in Kerry this year. But then they got absolutely annihilated in the county semi-final by mid-Kerry. And I was just quite surprised at how bad a beating that was that they took. I didn't think that they'd lose like that. And then coming into this game, I was quite nervous at how they would recover from that. Would they then get beaten by Clonmel Commercials off the back of that? But they responded very well, got the victory. And I'm way more confident in their ability to get over the line in this game. But in terms of that, given that Dingle are off the back of the Clonmel victory after a tough beating, do you think that they're as confident as they were going into the Kerry County Championship?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think it's interesting. All right, I think when we saw that result against Mid Kerry, we were probably thinking, it was a little bit odd considering how Dingle had wiped the floor with almost everyone they'd played up until that point. It'd been fairly comfortable for them. But maybe it was a case of Dingle maybe looking at the big picture and thinking, well, do you know what, we've won the club championship. So do we really need to go full strength for the county championship? Do we really need to go all out and risk injuries and risk this and risk that, when they probably maybe looked at it and thought, well, you've got East Kerry, I think, against Rathmore on the other side of semi-finals. Maybe they didn't, they're probably looking at it maybe and thinking in hindsight East Kerry will beat Rathmore. So at the end of the day, they're already in Munster anyway. And I think, to be fair, Mid Kerry gave a good rally to East Kerry as well. Like, they nearly won that game. So I do think Mid Kerry have got a good crop of footballers in their team as well, in fairness. And I think the Clonmel win was big. That will give them a bit of confidence. It will shore things up, obviously, going into this game. And like, Dingle have probably had tougher tests on paper than Castlehaven this year, you would probably say. And I think that should stand to them quite a lot going into this game. But look, it's two sides probably with familiar stories. Castlehaven coming through, Cork for the first time in a while. Dingle obviously the same. And I think it is going to be neck and neck. And I think it's probably going to go down to the wire, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's going to be no more than 2 points. I think, would you say you'd agree with that yourself? More or less than 2 points?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think the start is obviously key. Castlehaven, from looking, I haven't watched every game they've played, but from looking at a lot of the games, they do seem to be quite slow starters. Quite slow out of blocks against Rathcormac. Different times in the Cork Championship, a little bit slow out of blocks. And, especially in these conditions as well, like December time, every point is nearly worth 2 points, to be honest with you, because, like, conditions are so tough. It's, it's so cold out there. And especially for the way the game is kind of being played right now, like, if Dingle go 4 or 5 points up, if Dingle rack up a lead against Castlehaven like Rathcormac did when they went 1-3 up after 10 minutes, it's game over, because Dingle are going to slow the game down, keep the ball, sideways hand pass, and take this thing out of game, and they'll just invite Castlehaven onto them and just pick them off on the counter-attack. So I think the start of the game for Castlehaven is important. Like, they need to show Dingle that they're here to win it, and they're not here just to contain Dingle and make up the numbers. Like, they're here to make a statement. And you looked at last week, I think most people would have fancied Corofin to turn over Bridget's, and we saw what Bridget's did. It can be hard to know sometimes with club championships, because we obviously look at a lot of the players that each team have, but very often there's players on either side that we don't know about, like, we don't know a whole lot about, and then we see them play and we think, he's a phenomenal player. So, yeah, I think it will be close. I think 1 or 2 points, but I do think the opening 10, 15 minutes, I think is going to be crucial.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think whoever gets out of the blocks first has a massive advantage because, as you said, the way that the games are being played, we're not going to see 18 points for either team. This one is going to be 12 points to 10 or 12 points to a goal and 7 in favour of one team or the other, but it's not going to be by more than 2 points, which then obviously brings you on to the next thing. That's a great point that you made as well about the competition that Castlehaven have faced. It isn't the same level as the competition that Dingle have faced. Like Dingle have faced mid-Kerry, they won the Kerry Championship, beating some quality sides along the way. Like, can you really say the Castlehaven have faced, like, I know that Castlehaven obviously took out the likes of Nemo Rangers along their route, and that's a fantastic, phenomenal victory. But it's very, very difficult to see are Castlehaven at the level of Dingle. I think they are going to give them one hell of a go. But this brings you on to my next point. And I think by my point, I've made it pretty clear what I'm going to lean to. But for yourself, prediction time, the Ulster Football Final 2023/24, Castlehaven versus Dingle, 2:00. Who are you thinking?
I think Dingle. I think they should be too strong. Like at the end of the day, I don't want to sound like Michael Owen, but whoever scores more will win. And you look at the Dingle forwards, and they just have more ways they can hurt Castlehaven, and Castlehaven can hurt Dingle, in my opinion. And like especially with the form of the Gainies, like we mentioned before, like it's going to be interesting, all right. Like as he obviously said, Castlehaven have some fairly decent defenders. Rory Maguire, Catalan's obviously in there at centre back as well. Could he be the one to pick up Paul Gainey? Maybe Rory Maguire picks up Dylan Gainey. It's going to be like some interesting matchups and battles. But I just think Dingle do have too much firepower. And you do look at Castlehaven, like they struggled to get over the line against Cratloe. I think they needed extra time to win that game. I think that game was in Páirc Uí Chaoimh as well. Like they have struggled more often than not to get over the line in a lot of these games. Don't get me wrong, some very good players. Brian Hurley's back, Michael Hurley's back, but I just think Dingle do have too much firepower. And I think, what the thing is, like Dingle in losing to Mid-Kerry, it was almost like a reset. It was like a break. Mm-hmm. It was like, and it was the perfect way for them to go back to the drawing board and be like, where did we go wrong? And whilst all that was happening, Castlehaven have been slugging through some difficult games in Munster, which might stand for them. I know they came through Rackorma quite easily in the end after a slow start, but yeah, I just think Dingle have a bit more firepower, and I could just see them edging it by 2 or 3 points, I think.
Yeah, no, I am going to completely agree with you. Dingle by 2. For me, I just feel like the Gainies against the Hurleys pretty much. Tom O'Sullivan, I feel like, will have a big game for Dingle in the defence. I think he's going to pick up one of the 2 Hurleys. And then if Mark O'Connor is back in for Dingle, that's massive. Barry Dan O'Sullivan as well. Fantastic midfielder for Dingle. There's just some key midfield positions that I think Dingle slightly have the upper hand in. I think forward, I think it's pretty even enough. I think the Hurleys and the Gainies are both deadly dangerous. Castlehaven have been fantastic. They were the best team in the Cork Championship, no question about it. I thought that they were very impressive. They were slow out of the blocks against Rackorma, but pulled it back. I feel like Dingle might get the run on them at the start and then just about hold them off until the end. So I'm going Dingle by 2, no more than 2 points. But yeah, going to definitely stay tuned to a TG Car at 2 p.m. It's going to be an absolute nail biter of a final, I imagine. No more than a score in it at any given stage. So that brings us on to the main event, if you like, at 4:00. This one is one that everyone has been talking about since the 2 semi-finals were played and finished, and we knew that this was the Ulster final we were going to get. Interestingly, they have played each other not so long ago, and Glen got the victory that day, but they're facing off again. Glen against Scotstown. This time, it's in the Ulster Senior Football Final. It's on TG Car at 4:00. What a contest this is.
Absolutely, yeah. It's going to be, an absolute nail biter, neck and neck. You're hoping it's a spectacle. You're hoping it is entertaining when you look at how a lot of Scots or how a lot of White Graham's Glen's matches have been. They've been very nervy. They've been very cagey. I don't expect this game to be any different. I think it is going to be a game of chess in many ways. Who's going to flinch first? Who's going to throw the first punch? I think an early goal, as they say, might open this up. But I think it's going to be very interesting, as we said at the start. Like Scotstown have really come on strong. I think the addition of Jack McCarron has taken them to the next level in their team. And I think Glen have probably gone about their business quietly. Like there probably hasn't been huge amounts of hype about Glen this year as opposed to previous years. I think we've saw moments where Scotstown have blown away teams. We saw moments where Crokes have done it. And we've saw moments where Dingle have done it. Whereas Glen, a lot of their wins have been close. Like, the last day against Niamh Quinnell, they were pushed to the pin of their collar, came through, obviously, by a point. The game before that as well was very close, only a 4-point game. So, like, they have been pushed to the pin of their collar on more occasion than one. And look, that could definitely stand to them. I do think Scotstown overall have looked better. I think they've looked a little bit more impressive. They've moved the ball quicker. I think they've got more potent forwards who can do damage. I think Glen have looked sort of very passive at times watching them. They keep the ball for large parts. They almost look too focused on stopping the opposition rather than focused on sort of their own strengths. But look, it's going to be very interesting. And I suppose what you would say is, as you mentioned, like 2-3 years ago when Glen played Scotstown, I think it was an Ulster quarter final. I remember going into that game. I think Scotstown, where a lot of people were looking at Scotstown and thinking they should put up a battle here. They, when you look at some of their players, Glen were obviously fresh off winning, their first Derry championship, but Glen rocked up and absolutely schooled them. I think it was 10 or 11 points. I think the victory was. So, I think that will stand. That will definitely stand to Glen, knowing that they've beat these group of players before, so they can do it again. But at the same time, there does seem to be a different bite about Scotstown this time around, because when you do look at Scotstown, like for years they were flattering to deceive in Ulster, whereas it looks like this year there's definitely something different about them this time around. So yeah, look, hugely.
What it reminds me of, Aaron, actually? Do you know what it reminds you of? Yourself and myself, obviously big UFC fans. Do you know what this reminds me of? Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier too.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison. All right,
come back, Scotstown or Dustin Poirier, they come back.
Yeah,
and they're a different beast this time. And if Glen take them lightly, they could get knocked out of the Ulster Championship. Not literally, but I do think this game is really, really interesting, because I think when you look at Glen to me have not looked anywhere near as impressive this time round as they did last year. And on paper, they have a stronger team. Kieran McFall is back in. He's a huge player for them. But even though they haven't looked as impressive, here they are, Ulster Football Final, 3rd Derry Championship in a row. So they have less hype around them, yet they're still in the same place. Scotstown, on the other hand, have the hype now. Everybody's hyping up Scotstown. And Matthew made the great point when we were talking before the Kilcoo game. He said, why are Scotstown underdogs going into this game? Why are we not giving Scotstown a chance? He listed off the players: Jack McCarron, Darren Hughes, Kieran Hughes, Rory Beggan, Ryan O'Toole, Shane Carey. Why are these guys underdogs? As when you list them off like that, it is a real like, whoa, didn't realize they had that many good players who play for Monaghan. And it's just like, I didn't even mention Conor McCarthy there, I don't think. Like, they have a plethora of quality players. And going into this final against Glen, now everybody's like woken up to just how good Scotstown are, myself included. I didn't think that they'd be an outright threat for Ulster. I thought it was between Glen and Kilcoo again. Not to be. Scotstown upset that party, and now they're in the final. And everybody's woken up to just how good they are, including Glen. And they will have had a plan for them from probably before the semi-final, if we're being honest. And they have at the helm a man in Malachy O'Rourke who will know those Monaghan boys inside out. He will know Darren Hughes, Rory Beggan, Conor McCarthy, Jack McCarron. He'll know them all inside out. So I think that's a massive ace up the sleeve that Glen have going into this game, that I think many people aren't actually taking into account.
Yeah, like, and I think that was an ace in the sleeve 2 years ago as well, because I think Glen shut down Scotstown in more ways than one. Now, Scotstown didn't have Jack McCarron in their team back then. Obviously, he's transferred between clubs in Monaghan, so that's obviously why he's in Scotstown's team now. But even at that, though, like, I don't remember Scotstown really offering too much. I think Conor McCarthy was shut down. Graves Glen were more than on top in the midfield battle with Glass and Emmett Bradley, Keane McGuckie, and fantastic. Like, they just completely schooled Scotstown from start to finish, from what I remember. But as you said, like, yeah, like, you know, Scotstown, I think the reason maybe why people weren't taking Scotstown serious was, I don't even think it was that and got to do with their players. It was just the fact that year on year, like, Scotstown won, what was it? I think they've won like 8 of the last 10 Monaghan championships. Like, they're not new to Ulster. They're not a new team. They've been around the block for a while. But in the knockout stages in the Ulster Championship, you know, they just kept flattering to deceive. They were a bit like England at major tournaments, you know, like the golden generation in many ways. Yeah. But there does seem to be a different kick about them now. Like, after that win versus Kilcoo, you're looking at it and thinking, right, okay, they do seem, you know, they seem well on it now. Whereas before, they'd go into Ulster and maybe be a little bit sluggish to begin with. But yeah, as you said, I think Glen, I think Malachy O'Rourke, probably one of the most astute managers I think there is. He knows Monaghan inside and out. He's obviously, you know, managed the county team for years. He knows these lads inside and out. He'll know the matchups. You know, he'll know which players to put on Jack McCarron. He'll know who to, you know, try and stop Conor McCarthy's influence bursting up from wing back. I'm sure he'll have a tactic laid out to try and stop the influence of Rory Beggan as well, who I don't think had a big impact the last time they played Glen. You know, so I think it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a real game of chess in many ways. I think it's going to be, you know, it might be the most entertaining game in terms of, you know, shootouts, but at this time of the year, especially with conditions and everything, it's probably unlikely to realistically think that you're going to get a game like that every time. But one thing I think it will be is intriguing, and it will have you on the edge of your seat. And, you know, it's definitely going to go down to the wire. You know, extra time. I don't even know if I'm going to penalties or whether there's a replay or how that works. But this could go all the way. This could really go all the way.
Yeah, I'm predicting that it will go to extra time. That's what I'm predicting. I'm predicting this one won't be solved in the hour. Glen and Scotstown are going to be neck and neck for the entire game. It's not going to be a shootout. It's going to be an arm wrestle. This game is going to be who wants it more. You know, bodies on the line, nobody giving an inch, and they'll drag each other to extra time. And then you need the team that can get over the line. And this is where it gets really difficult, because both these sides have got over the line in other games leading up to this. Glen, with the last kick of the game, beat Naomh Conaill with Emmett Bradley scoring that point. Scotstown, with the last kick of the game, beat Kilcoo with Rory Beggan landing that point. So both these sides have already shown in the championship that when it comes down to the wire, they don't flinch and they find a way to win. So who is going to do it? That is such a difficult question to ask. I've one more question before I ask you for your prediction. Which team, do you think is under more pressure coming into this game? Do you think Glen are under more pressure as the team that were kind of fancy to win Ulster from the start? Or do you think Scotstown are under more pressure to finally deliver an Ulster title with this team?
Yeah, it's hard to know, because you would automatically assume Glen are under more pressure because of what happened last year, obviously, with the whole scenario with Kilmacud Crokes, and the fact, obviously, they've won 3 Derry titles in a row, won the Ulster Championship last year, and certainly when you've watched them, they've looked like a team that are under pressure. Like, even in the start of the game against Niamh Quinnell, the amount of chances they were missing was unbelievable. Kept hitting wides, couldn't get their forwards into the game. I think only one of their starting forwards scored in Keane McGuckie, and they just haven't. And even you look at Conor Glass, who has played an enormous amount of football in the past year. Watching him in that game, don't get me wrong, he did very well, but he just looks jaded in terms of when Glass is at his best, he'll pick up the ball in midfield. He might run, he might beat a player, he might set up a score. Whereas now he's getting the pass and then he's just playing off the pass straight away because the energy, there seems to be a lot of fatigue there. But with Scotstown though, at the same time, like look, they've been dominant in Monaghan for so long, and now seems like finally is their opportunity. And when you look at the bulk of their players, Kieran Hughes, I know they have a couple of young players in there, like Ryan O'Toole's obviously come in, a couple of other younger lads as well. But you look at Rory Beggan, Conor McCarthy, Kieran Hughes, Darren Hughes. I know club players tend to go on and play till they're 40 odd. So we certainly won't be looking to hang up their boots anytime soon. But like this is their moment really now. Like this is their chance.
It's the best chance they've had for years. There's no question about it.
And Glen, as you said, are coming in a not the best. Like I know they have, like obviously they're coming in on the back of multiple wins, so it's not like they're coming in a bad run of form. But they're coming in having not shown what we've seen previously. But what you would say though is that Emmett Bradley, I think, has looked back to his best. Like he kicked 3 points the last day. He's obviously not really been involved with Derry like last year. I think he had a couple of injury issues. So having him back, I think, is huge. And having him back to his best. And he looks like a player who's re-energized, rejuvenated. And, if Glen can win that midfield battle, that might just be what maybe gets them over the line.
Yeah, and that does bring me to the decision. So the Ulster Football Final 2023/24, Glen versus Scotstown, 4:00. Who wins this one?
It's very, very hard. Very, very hard to predict. I think Glen have the better defence. They've more control in games. They keep the ball better. They've the better midfield. But I think Scotstown have players that can just win the game in moments. The likes of Rory Beggan, Jack McCarron, Conor McCarthy. It's very, very hard to call. I think it will go down to the distance. It'll be a point either way. I have a feeling Scotstown might nick it, though, to be honest with you. I just think with the way the year has been, the fact of getting over the line versus Kilcue, I think they do have a lot more firepower than Glen, in my opinion, in terms of their attack. I think Glen, in my opinion, will keep the ball for large parts. They'll have the majority of the possession, but I can just see Scotstown picking them off on the counter-attack and nicking it by a point. I think Jack McCarron's been in brilliant form. And look, especially in these conditions as well, like you need someone reliable to step up in big moments. And look, I know Glen have plenty of reliable players, Glass and Ethan Doherty, these lads who can step up, Danny Talon, who can step up in big moments. But you're looking at Rory Beggan, you can see a scenario again where he could kick the winner, and how many frees is he going to pop over? How many 45s is he going to pop over? So, yeah, I just fancy Scotstown to nick it.
Yeah, I understand why you said that, and I may regret the next minute of my life, but I'm just about going to go with Glen. I said Glen from the get-go. I said Glen to win Ulster and fall to Kilmacud in the semi-final. But I've said that Glen would win Ulster, so I'm not going to go against my old self. I'm going to stick with Glen just about. But I genuinely mean an arm wrestle of a contest. I think if this game was played in the summer, I think Scotstown will win. I think if it was played on Croke Park, open pitch, I think Scotstown win, but it's not. It's going to be played on a tight pitch. The conditions, I imagine, won't be the best. It's going to be an arm wrestle. Who wants it more? And when the game is reduced to picking off scores when you get your chances, Glen have been doing that for the last 2 years now and finding ways to win by a point, 2 points. I think after extra time, Glen by a point. That's what I'm going with. I wouldn't be surprised if Scotstown won, and feel free to tell me that you were right and I was wrong if they do. But
yeah, to be fair, I did predict actually Glen to win it back, before a ball was kicked as well. But I just haven't really been entirely I think they've had a lot of control in games. They've looked they've been comfortable on the ball, but I just don't think they have the same attacking threat as last year. And I think they are there for the taking. It's just a matter of whether Scotstown can take it. But yeah, as you said though, it definitely will be either a point either way.
To be completely honest, I can see this being a game that Scotstown sit on the Monday and think, how have we let that pass us by?
Yeah, I think so.
I wouldn't be stunned if that happens. It's not that I think that. I just think Glen usually find a way to get over the line. And I think when teams have that aura, teams make mistakes against them. But I don't think that Scotstown will be put off by the Glen aura. God, it's a tough game to call. And both teams going into this are the two best club sides in Ulster this year. No question about it. They're the two best up in the province. And it's fitting that they've come up against each other in the final. So I'm buzzing to see that. And yeah, well, put it in the comments below, guys. Anyone, what do you think? Dingle or Castlehaven, Glen or Scotstown? Who's going to win those finals? Thanks again to Aaron for coming on. Thank you to the viewers for giving us your time on this preview. Enjoy the games on the weekend. And until I see you on Monday reviewing all the games, take care.